All right, here is the video of lesson 7.01a independent practice. Here we're working with something called system of linear equations. Basically, we're going to see two lines and the solution or the answer of the system is when the two lines meet. Okay, so when they say what is the solution of the system of equation, you're going to look at the two lines you see in the graph and you want to see whether they meet. If they do meet, because they don't always meet. So in this problem number one, you can see that the blue line and the red line, they meet at point C. And that's what I'm doing there. See, so I just selected that one. Now, in problem number two, they're not going to give you a graph. Instead, they're going to give you an equation. And here is how you do this. You're going to have to use your Desmos calculator. I suggest you do it, the Desmos Scientific. Okay, so you're going to pull out this calculator out. And what you're going to do, if you notice, they gave us two equations, okay? And the idea is that we need to test if these pairs work in these two equations. Now, remember that in a parentheses, this is called order pair. That's the name of these pairs of numbers. The first number is X, the second number is Y. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start replacing. See, first I'm gonna write, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna put the Y here, and then the other side I'm gonna put 1/2 X minus 4. I hope you notice that what I wrote here in the calculator is the Y on the left side. I put it in one line, and the 1/2 X minus 4 in the other line. And basically, I'm going to start replacing. So how much is my Y? I'm going to start with A. I'm going to check which one of these work. Okay. And the idea is that if it works on both equations, then it will be a solution. So I'm going to start with 0, 3. So the Y here is 3. See, I'm going to replace the Y with 3. And the X, which I'm going to put a parentheses because that fraction is multiplying X, I'm going to replace it with 0. Okay. Now look at the what I have in the first line, 3. Look at my answer in the second line. Are they equal? No. So that means it cannot be letter A, my answer. So I'm going to try now B. So who is my Y? See, I'm going to go back to what I had at the beginning. So now I'm going to test B. Who's my Y? -3. So I'm going to replace my Y here with -3. And who's my X? 2. So again, I'm going to replace the X with an empty parentheses, and I'm going to put inside 2. And look at my answer up here, and look at my answer here. Can you see they're the same? So far, 2 comma -3 works in the first equation. Now I have to do the same thing for the second equation, see? That says Y, so I'm gonna put Y in one line of the calculator. I hit the blue button. Now I'm gonna type -3x plus 3. And again, I'm going to use the same pair. I'm still in pair B. Okay, and I'm going to test it now in the second equation because it worked in the first one, as you notice up here. Okay, so now what is my Y value here? -3. And wherever you see X, you're going to put an empty parentheses and you're going to replace the X with, in this case, is 2. And look at my answer here, and look at my answer here. Oh, I got the same thing. So it also worked in my second equation. That's why I'm going to choose letter B here. Okay? And you can see I got it right. Let me show you the next one. Same idea. This here is all calculators, guy. Okay, so here we go. The first equation. The first equation says Y. So I'm going to put Y in the calculator, hit the blue button, equal -x plus 4. And they gave me a bunch of pairs here that I need to test if it works in both equations. And how do I know if they work? That's what I'm showing you with the calculator. So let's start with the first pair, negative 812. Remember, first number is x, second number is y. So I have the y. Who I'm going to replace this y with the first pair here with 12. And who I'm going to replace the x here. Remember the x, you're going to put an empty parentheses. Okay. And I hope you notice the negative stays outside the parenthesis. And I'm going to replace x with negative 8. And look, I got the same answer in my first line and in my second line. So that means negative 812 is working with the first equation. Now I'm going to test the same pair with the second equation. So I'm going to get a new line here. So, and now I'm going to type 2x, see, because that's what I have before the equal. And in a new line, I'm going to type 7 minus y. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the first equation. I'm still with the first pair. I'm going to replace the x. Remember, you're going to put an empty parenthesis. And I'm going to replace the x with negative 8 because that's my x value here. And I'm going to replace, and you can see, look, I got negative 16. And now I'm going to replace my y with 12. And look at my answer here and here. Are they exactly the same? No. So this pair worked for the first equation, but it didn't work for the second. So that's why it's not going to be my answer. Okay, so here we go again. Let me go back what I did. Let me replace everything back to what I had. So the first two lines here is my first equation. My last two lines here is my second equation. Now I'm going to test the pair 8, negative 9. So how much is my y for the first equation? Is negative 9. See, you can see it right there. And who is my, and you can see I only have negative 9. Now I'm going to replace my x with 8. And look what I got, negative 4. But when I look at, with negative 9, they're not exactly the same. So this pair doesn't work in the first equation. It doesn't. So now we're going to try the third pair, 3, 1. So let me put back the letters. So I'm going to test in my first equation, wherever I see the y, I'm going to put 1. And wherever I see the x, I'm going to put 3. And you can see, look, I got the same answer in the first line and second line. So it's working in my first equation. Now I'm going to check it out in my second equation. I'm going to test it, the 3 and the 1 in my second equation. Wherever I see x, I'm going to put 3. And you can see I got 6. And wherever I see y, I'm going to put 1. And look, I got the same answer in my third and my fourth line. So what does that mean? That this pair, 3, 1, it worked in the first equation, and it also worked in the second equation. That's why I'm going to choose letter C. And you can see I did it. Let's go to the next problem. I hope you see this is all calculator. Everything here is calculator. Same idea again. Same idea. So get the calculator. Let's clear everything out. And let's start with the first equation. I have y. See? So whatever's before the equal goes in one line. Whatever's after the equal goes to the next line. So 3x plus 5. What I'm going to do, I'm going to check if this pair works in the first equation. Okay, so I have 4 pairs. I'm going to start with letter A. Remember, first number is x, second number is y. So I'm going to replace this y with negative 1 because that's what it says there. And my x, remember the x, put an empty parentheses. And you're going to replace the x with 6. If you have the same answer in line 1 and in line 2 of your calculator, it worked. But in my case, I have different answers. So this pair is not working in the first equation. So it cannot be my answer. So let me put back the x and the y. Now I'm going to test my second pair, negative 1 and 2. So my y here is 2. And my x here, remember, you're going to put an empty parenthesis for the x, is negative 1. And look, I got the same answer in my first line and my second line. So what I'm going to do now is so this pair, negative 1, 2 is working for the first equation. Now I'm going to test it for the second equation. So for the second equation, I'm going to put in the calculator. So 3y, that is before the equal sign. See, I'm going to put in my third line. And in my fourth line, I'm going to write x minus 9. See, what was after the equal. And I'm going to use the same pair again, negative 1, 2. Why? Because it worked in the first equation. I need to check if it works in the second equation. So who is my y? So here the y, I'm going to put an empty parentheses. And I'm going to replace the y with 2. See, that's what it says right there in the second pair. And now I'm going to go my last line, and I'm going to replace x with negative 1. You can see that's what I have there. Look at my answer in my third line and in my fourth line. They're not exactly the same. So negative 1, 2 worked for the first equation, but it didn't work for the second. To be the solution, it has to work in both. So I'm not going to choose B. Now I'm going to try C. Okay, so let me put everything back like I had it at the beginning there. Okay, so now we're going to try the pair 3, negative 2 in the first equation. So who's your y? Negative 2. Who is your x? My x here is 3. Okay, look, the first line is negative 2. The second line is 14. Do you have the same answer, same number? No. So what does that mean? That this pair doesn't work in the first equation. Since it doesn't work in the first equation, I'm not going to even try it in the second. So by process of elimination, I already eliminated A, B, and C. So that means the answer here has to be D. Okay? And you can see I got it right. All right? Let me do one more because 5 and 6 are very similar. So I'm going to do question number 5. And I'm going to clear my calculator. Remember, you're using the calculator. So they gave you a story. And the story, they wrote it as 2 equations, okay? So that's what happened here. But I'm doing the same thing I did before. They gave me a bunch of pairs, and I want to test if it works in these equations. Now here, when you have all the letters on the same side, you're going to write the side that has the letters. So in the calculator, I'm going to write 2x plus 3y. I'm not going to put equal. I'm only writing the left side of the equal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace x and y with one of these pairs. And I want to check if I get 12. So I'm going to start with the first pair, 1, 4. So that means this x, replace it with an empty parenthesis. You're going to replace it with 1. And this y, I'm going to replace it with 4. So again, empty parenthesis. For the y, replace the y. Don't leave the y, replace it. Look, I got 14, but it says here equal 12. So 14 is not same thing as 12. So it didn't work, the first pair. Now I'm going to try the second pair and let me put back the letters. Okay. So there you go, 2x plus 3y. Now I'm going to try 0, 5. So for the x, I'm going to put an empty parenthesis and I'm replacing the x with 0. And the y, I'm going to put an empty parenthesis and I'm going to replace the y with 5. You can see it right there. Look what I got. I got 15. Is that answer the same thing as 12? No. So it cannot be the second pair. See, I'm only testing in the first equation. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to even make the effort testing in the second one. For a pair to be a solution, it has to work in both, okay? So let me go back. Let's put the letters back again normal. Now I'm going to try 2, 3, okay? So my x, I'm going to replace it, put an empty parenthesis, and I'm going to replace my x with 2. And the y, I'm going to replace it with 3. So replace the y with an empty parenthesis, and we're going to put 3. Look what I got. I got 13. Is 13 the same thing as 12? No. So that means that none of the first 3 pairs work in the first equation. So it cannot be a solution. By a process of elimination, has to be the last one. There's no other choice. Okay? And that's how you do number 6. Okay? I hope this helps you a little bit doing this homework.